Hollywood's golden era looked like pure magic on screen, perfect premieres, glamorous parties, and magazine covers that made stars seem untouchable. But behind the polished images, a darker, hidden world thrived, a world where private heartbreak and betrayal were rampant. And studio fixers worked overtime to keep scandals from reaching the public eye. Many of the leading men we adored, the stars that made millions of viewers swoon, faced personal lives full of infidelity and heartbreak. These weren't mere rumors or fleeting affairs. They were calculated betrayals that left even the most celebrated actors emotionally crushed. What makes this era fascinating is the enormous gap between the public perception and private reality. Fans imagined these men as ultimate romantic icons, yet behind closed doors, they often returned to homes where their wives sought love and excitement elsewhere. Some never even discovered the full extent of the betrayal until decades later. Take Humphrey Bogart, for example. Long before he became famous for his romance with Lauren Bacall, he was trapped in a toxic marriage with his third wife, Mayo Methot. Known as Sluggy for her violent temper during alcohol-fueled fights, Methot was infamous in Hollywood circles. Their Hollywood Hills estate became legendary for its chaos, with shattered dishes, broken glass, and even furniture hurled across rooms during arguments. Methot's jealousy wasn't mere paranoia, it was classic projection. While Bogart was filming or promoting his movies, Methot entertained numerous lovers. Sometimes openly, Bogart suspected what was happening, but the societal expectations of the time made it impossible for him to confront it publicly. Male stars were expected to maintain control over their households, and admitting a wife's infidelity could ruin his tough guy image. Ironically, Methot's explosive rages over Bogart's imagined affairs grew in direct proportion to her own real-life betrayals. Their marriage finally ended in 1945, after years of quiet humiliation, when Bogart finally found the courage to leave. Her for Lauren Bacall, these early experiences reveal a recurring theme in Hollywood's golden era. Behind the public charm, charisma, and glamour, leading men were human, vulnerable to betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak. While audiences adored them for their strength and romance on screen, the truth was far messier. Bogart's story is just the beginning of a larger narrative, glimpse into the private lives of Hollywood icons whose reality was far from the fairy tale images projected to the world. In the next part, we'll explore a different kind of golden couple, America's favorite TV, redhead and her musician, husband whose marriage looked perfect on screen but hid layers of infidelity and clever retaliation. Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz were Hollywood's ultimate TV power couple, dazzling audiences with their comic timing and chemistry on I Love Lucy. On screen, they were flawless, the perfect blend of charm, humor, and romance that captivated millions of viewers and set the standard for television couples. Yet behind the cameras, their marriage told a far different story, full of secrets, infidelity, and calculated emotional maneuvering. Desi Arnaz, the charismatic Cuban band leader, was notorious for his extramarital affairs. His indiscretions ranged from chorus girls to prostitutes, and studio publicists struggled to contain the rumors. One CBS executive even revealed Desi wouldn't just cheat, he'd do it openly, often in places where he was certain Lucy might discover him. It was almost as if he wanted her to know. Despite his celebrity, there was little attempt to hide his behavior from those who worked closely with the couple. Lucille Ball, however, was far from passive. After enduring years of public humiliation, she eventually began having affairs of her own. But unlike Desi, hers were discreet and strategic. Lucy's relationships were not about rebellion or escapism, but about emotional survival and maintaining a sense of control in a marriage that continually undermined her dignity. A longtime friend explained, what Lucy did was clever. She ensured she had the emotional fulfillment she needed while protecting her public image. She knew Hollywood audiences would forgive Desi's mistakes but would never forgive her if she were caught. While Desi acted impulsively, Lucy was methodical. She reportedly developed secret connections with at least 2 of her co-stars, carefully ensuring plausible deniability at all times. Her ability to balance emotional independence with public perception highlighted her intelligence and adaptability, qualities that contributed to to her success both on and off the screen. What makes their story even more fascinating is that, despite mutual betrayals, the love between Lucy and Desi never fully disappeared. Even after their divorce in 1960 and subsequent remarriages, an unspoken bond remained. Longtime friends observed that no matter how far apart they were physically, there was always a current of emotional connection running between them, a testament to the complexity of love, loyalty, and survival in Hollywood's golden age. The tale of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz reminds us that behind the laughter and glitter of television stardom lay very human struggles. Even couples who seemed perfect to millions were navigating a maze of betrayal, emotion, and personal survival. In the next segment, we'll turn our attention to Clark Gable, Hollywood's legendary king, whose personal life was far less regal than his on-screen persona suggested. Clark Gable, known as the King of Hollywood, captured hearts worldwide as the dashing Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind. His charm, rugged masculinity, and star power made him one of cinema's most bankable leading men for decades. But behind the glitz and glamour, Gable's personal life told a very different story, a story of complicated marriages, infidelity, and emotional turmoil that contrasted sharply with his public image before finding lasting happiness with Carole Lombard. Gable's earlier marriages exposed him as a man often powerless in his own home. His first two wives, Josephine Dillon and Maria Langham, were older, wealthy women who helped mold the young actor into a polished star. Dillon, 17 years his senior, and Langham, 11 years older, refined his speech, guided his career, and provided social stability. But there was a cost. Both women maintained significant control over his personal and professional life, and reports suggest that their romantic fidelity was questionable. Neighbors and insiders hinted at the presence of other men in both marriages, particularly during Gable's extended absences on film shoots. Josephine. Dillon reportedly had male visitors when Gable was away at studio events, though whether these were romantic or merely social is unclear. Langham, too, seemed to have a friend who appeared consistently during Gable's rising fame, hinting at an intimate connection. These patterns reveal that Gable, despite his on-screen authority, often returned home to complicated domestic dynamics, with his wives exercising power and at times pursuing their own desires. Everything changed when Gable met Carole Lombard, a successful actress closer to his own age. With Carole, he experienced a genuine partnership, built on mutual respect and passion rather than convenience or career strategy. A studio insider observed that for the first time, Gable was truly in love, not just playing a part dictated by someone else's ambitions. Their marriage represented a rare equality in Hollywood, a union where emotional fulfillment was mutual, and Gable could finally step out from under the shadow of his earlier, controlling spouses. Yet, these earlier experiences left a mark on Gable. They highlighted the recurring Hollywood theme of private vulnerability contrasting with public persona. Even the most celebrated stars could be emotionally dethroned at home, facing betrayals and complex domestic dynamics that the audience would never see. The story of Clark Gable reminds us that Golden Age leading men often contended with private trials behind their polished appearances. His journey from controlled marriages to a true partnership with Carole Lombard foreshadowed a recurring pattern among Hollywood stars, struggling with infidelity, emotional manipulation, and the delicate balance between public image and private reality. Gary Cooper, the embodiment of American heroism on screen, was celebrated for portraying integrity, moral clarity, and the kind of straightforward decency that made audiences admire him. Films like High Noon and The Pride of the Yankees cemented his image as Hollywood's ultimate gentleman. Yet off-screen, Cooper's personal life was far more complicated. Particularly his marriage to socialite Veronica Rocky, Balfi, their 28-year union, often perceived as stable and traditional, was underpinned by an unspoken agreement. Both Cooper and Rocky understood the reality of Hollywood. Relationships, affairs happened, discretion was vital, and public appearances must remain flawless. Cooper's extramarital relationships with co-stars such as Grace Kelly, Ingrid Bergman, and Patricia Neal were well known in insider circles, though rarely publicized. Meanwhile, Rocky, far from being naive, cultivated her own discreet relationships to ensure she received the emotional fulfillment her husband's wandering eye couldn't provide. This arrangement wasn't born of indifference but of sophistication. Rocky hailed from high society, where marriages often functioned as social contracts, and the rules were simple. Absolute discretion, maintain appearances, and do not embarrass one another. She didn't throw scenes or make ultimatums. Instead, she quietly formed bonds with intelligent, refined men from her social circle, usually on the East Coast, well outside Hollywood gossip circles. These connections were carefully managed, allowing her to maintain dignity and independence. Cooper, in turn, remained devoted to his public image as a devoted husband while pursuing his affairs privately. He and Rocky shared genuine affection and respect, often seen interacting warmly at public events, raising their daughter Maria together, and maintaining an outwardly harmonious household. The complexity of their relationship reflected an unusual but functional balance. Two adults accommodating each other's desires without sacrificing appearances. The arrangement did encounter challenges. Cooper's 3-year affair with Patricia Neal grew so intense it threatened the marriage's foundation. During this period, Cooper even temporarily left the family home, signaling that emotional limits existed. Rocky's rule was clear. Affairs were tolerable, but falling in love crossed the line. Ultimately, Cooper ended the relationship with Neal and returned to his marriage, maintaining both the family structure and public image. Gary Cooper's life highlights Hollywood's unique moral economy, where discretion, appearances, and unspoken agreements often govern the private lives of stars. His marriage demonstrates that fidelity and love were often negotiated rather than absolute, reflecting the complicated realities behind the polished facades of cinema's golden age. Mickey Rooney, Hollywood's boyish heartthrob of the late 1930s and early 1940s, captured the public's imagination with his boundless energy, charm, and the wholesome Andy Hardy persona. Yet behind the scenes, Rooney's romantic life was a roller coaster of chaos, heartbreak, and scandal. A series of 8 marriages, many marked by infidelity, painted a starkly different picture from the lovable image on screen. Rooney's first marriage to Hollywood beauty, Ava Gardner in 1942, set a precedent that would repeat throughout his life. Standing just 5'2" but brimming with charisma, Mickey pursued women with intensity and flamboyance, overwhelming his partners with grand gestures, gifts, and attention. Gardner, initially captivated, quickly became disillusioned by Rooney's frequent absences, his fascination with nightlife, and rumors of extramarital affairs. Her response, according to insiders, was equally dramatic. She reportedly began a liaison with billionaire Howard Hughes during their marriage. Mickey, caught up in his own adventures, remained oblivious until studio insiders alerted him to the situation. This pattern of reciprocal infidelity recurred across Rooney's subsequent marriages. His second wife, Betty Jane Phillips, allegedly began seeing a musician after discovering Rooney's ongoing affairs. His third spouse, Martha Vickers, reportedly became involved with a director during their union. The irony was glaring. While Mickey instigated these patterns of betrayal, he reacted with jealousy and indignation when his wives mirrored his behavior. Colleagues noted his explosive reactions, despite his own continuous romantic pursuits. By his 5th marriage, the pattern had accelerated, with wives seeking emotional or physical fulfillment elsewhere mere months into their unions. Industry veterans observed that the public almost treated it like a spectacle, placing informal bets on how long it would take for either Mickey or his new wife to be seen publicly with someone else. Despite his fame and charm, Rooney's inability to maintain loyalty highlighted a recurring Hollywood truth. Even stars adored by millions were subject to the same emotional turbulence and relational complexities as ordinary people. Rooney's life illustrates the clash between celebrity persona and private reality. On screen, he was wholesome, charming, and endlessly likable. Off-screen, his relationships were volatile, marked by mutual betrayals, jealousy, and heartbreak. His story underscores a broader theme of Hollywood's golden age. Appearances were meticulously managed, but the human emotions beneath were often messy, unpredictable, and far less controlled than the cameras suggested. Next, we'll dive into Errol Flynn. When two cheaters share a mansion, whose tumultuous marriage with Lily, Dietrich created a household defined by parallel lives, scandal, and dramatic excess. Errol Flynn, Hollywood's swashbuckling sensation, was renowned for his daring on-screen exploits and undeniable charisma. With his rakish smile and magnetic presence, he became the definitive action hero of the golden era. Yet off-screen, Flynn's personal life mirrored his adventurous roles, turbulent, unpredictable, and scandalous. His first marriage to French actress, Lily Demita, created a volatile household where fidelity was clearly not a shared priority. Flynn, famously declaring, "I like my whiskey old and my women young," pursued pleasure relentlessly. Demita, an established European star, was equally unrestrained. Their marriage operated under an unspoken understanding. Each could pursue affairs as long as some level of discretion was maintained. But discretion was often optional, and the couple's mutual infidelities became part of a bizarre, almost theatrical domestic routine the Flynn-Demita household became, notorious for its parallel lives under one roof. The couple maintained separate bedrooms connected by a sitting room, which sometimes accommodated guests who were more than casual visitors. Lavish parties at their Mulholland Drive estate often showcased both spouses openly entertaining admirers, Flynn with starlets in one room, Demita with her own suitors in another. Guests described these events as surreal, like being part of an elaborate charade where infidelity was simultaneously acknowledged and ignored. Despite the chaos, Flynn and Demita maintained a passionate connection. Their arguments were legendary, often erupting in multiple languages, with objects thrown and threats made in moments of intense emotion. Yet reconciliation was equally dramatic and immediate, suggesting a relationship governed as much by intensity as by instability. Their marriage, however, was unsustainable. After 6 tumultuous years, it ended in 1942. Flynn's ongoing infidelities contributed to the dissolution, but friends suggested the relationship's eventual collapse stemmed from sheer exhaustion. Neither spouse could maintain such a high-drama lifestyle indefinitely. Their union highlights the extraordinary extremes of Hollywood relationships, where public charm often masked chaotic private lives, and where the boundary between love and spectacle was constantly blurred. Errol Flynn's story emphasizes the golden era's recurring theme. Even the most glamorous stars were not immune to betrayal, jealousy, and emotional turbulence. Behind the swashbuckling adventures and heroic screen personas lay real humans, grappling with the complexities of marriage, desire, and reputation. Next, we'll explore William Holden, the golden boy who met his match, whose marriage revealed that even Hollywood icons could encounter personal challenges behind the camera's lens. William Holden epitomized the all-American leading man during Hollywood's golden age, handsome, charming, and radiating masculine appeal. He captivated audiences in classics, like Sunset Boulevard and The Bridge on the River Kwai. Yet, behind his polished screen image lay a complex personal life, particularly his long marriage to actress Brenda Marshall, which revealed a nuanced and often concealed reality. Holden's marriage to Marshall lasted an impressive 30 years, from 1941 to 1971, a remarkable span. In an industry notorious for fleeting unions, to the public it appeared as a model of stability, but the truth was more intricate. Holden's numerous affairs, often with high-profile co-stars such as Grace Kelly and Audrey Hepburn, were an open secret in Hollywood circles. He had a magnetic charm that few women could resist, and his private romantic life was far from discreet. Brenda Marshall, however, was no passive observer. Rather than enduring humiliation or taking a public stand, she carved out her own independent emotional life. After realizing that Holden's infidelities were a permanent aspect of their relationship, she cultivated close, discreet relationships with men who provided the emotional attention her husband could not. These were not flamboyant affairs, but carefully managed connections, often with intelligent, cultured men who respected her dignity. Neighbors reported that she entertained these gentlemen friends when Holden was away on location, maintaining a private world alongside her public persona. The Holden Marshall dynamic created an unusual but functional household arrangement. When William returned from shoots or affairs, the couple seamlessly resumed their public roles as a devoted Hollywood pair. They raised their children together, maintained appearances at social events, and displayed an outward harmony that concealed the complexity of their private lives. Close friends described their marriage as pragmatic, a balance between love, practicality, and the harsh realities of celebrity life. This unconventional arrangement highlights a recurring theme in Hollywood's golden era: the gap between public image and private reality. Stars like Holden, celebrated for romantic and masculine ideals on screen, often negotiated personal happiness and emotional fulfillment behind closed doors, creating arrangements that protected both family and reputation. William Holden's story illustrates that even the most admired leading men were vulnerable to human complexities, betrayal, desire, and the challenge of balancing fame with private life. His marriage demonstrates that emotional resilience and strategic discretion often guided personal decisions in a world obsessed with appearances. Next, we'll examine Tony Curtis, the Hollywood heartbreaker, who got a taste of his own medicine, whose tumultuous marriage revealed the consequences of unchecked infidelity. Tony Curtis, with his striking looks and magnetic charm, was the epitome of Hollywood allure in the 1950s. Married to Janet Leigh, the couple symbolized the glamorous ideal of a showbiz marriage. Young, attractive, and photogenic, Curtis and Leigh were often portrayed as the perfect Hollywood couple. Yet behind the polished images and magazine spreads, their marriage told a far more complicated story, where Curtis's notorious womanizing eventually provoked a response from Leigh that few outside their inner circle anticipated. Curtis's reputation as a ladies' man was well established even before marrying Leigh in 1951. While their marriage was based on genuine attraction, it did little to curb his appetite for other women. From co-stars to extras, Hollywood parties to location shoots, Curtis pursued women with an enthusiasm that became legendary within the industry. His affairs were rarely discreet. Insiders noted that everyone seemed aware of his behavior, though the public continued to believe in the perfect marriage marketed through fan magazines. What's less known is how Janet Leigh responded. Publicly, she was cast as the loyal, suffering wife enduring Curtis's indiscretions. Privately, however, she developed her own network of emotional and romantic connections, asserting agency within a marriage dominated by her husband's impulsive conquests. Leigh's relationships were more meaningful and selective, focused on intellectual and emotional compatibility rather than fleeting physical encounters. She formed bonds with men, including co-stars and at least one director, that provided the emotional support Curtis could not offer, maintaining discretion to protect her public image. The dynamics of their marriage created an unusual equilibrium. Curtis pursued physical relationships openly and impulsively, while Leigh built deeper, controlled attachments in the background. Those familiar with the couple noted the irony. Curtis's obvious affairs were often less threatening to the stability of their marriage than Leigh's quiet, emotionally substantial connections. The public perception of Leigh as a passive victim masked her strategic response to Curtis's behavior, highlighting her intelligence and self-respect. After 11 years, their marriage ended in 1962, while Curtis's infidelities were the stated reason. Those close to the couple suggest that the tipping point was Leigh's formation of emotional attachments that made the emptiness of her marriage impossible to ignore. Curtis's story, like so many in Hollywood's golden age, demonstrates the gap between public image and private reality, a lesson in both charm and consequence. Next, we'll cover Robert Walker, the devastated star left behind, whose wife's high-profile affair left him powerless and heartbroken. Robert Walker, celebrated for portraying sensitive and vulnerable young men, earned critical acclaim for his chilling performance as Bruno Anthony in Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, yet the role that caused him the deepest personal pain wasn't on screen. It was the devastating betrayal he endured when his wife, Jennifer Jones, began a very public affair with the powerful Hollywood producer David O. Selznick. Unlike secretive infidelities, this affair was impossible to ignore. Selznick actively pursued Jones while shaping her career, leaving Walker powerless to intervene. Walker and Jones, originally Phyllis Ely, met as young acting students, married in 1939, and moved to Hollywood together. Early in their marriage, Walker enjoyed more professional success, securing an MGM contract while Jones struggled to find meaningful roles. Everything changed in 1941 when Jones auditioned for Selznick, a producer whose influence over Hollywood was immense. Selznick was immediately captivated, not just by her talent but by Jones herself, signing her to a personal contract, renaming her Jennifer Jones, and meticulously shaping her career and public image. By 1942, the professional relationship between Selznick and Jones had evolved into a romantic one, even as she remained married to Walker. Studio insiders recall that their interactions were not hidden. Selznick frequently sent his car for Jones, delivered flowers, and was seen with her at restaurants and functions. The affair unfolded publicly within Hollywood circles, creating a surreal and humiliating situation for Walker, who had little recourse. Walker's helplessness was compounded by the power dynamics at play. Selznick controlled much of the industry, and challenging him could have destroyed Walker's career. Walker watched, unable to intervene, as the man pursuing his wife simultaneously shaped her professional success. The emotional toll was severe. Struggling with feelings of betrayal and inadequacy, Walker turned to alcohol, a habit that would later contribute to his premature death. His public behavior became erratic, reflecting both personal anguish and professional instability. The marriage officially ended in 1945, when Jones filed for divorce, and she later married Selznick in 1949. For Walker, the aftermath was devastating. Not only had he lost his wife, but his relationship with their two sons was disrupted as they primarily lived with Jones and Selznick. Though Walker experienced a brief professional revival with his performance in Strangers on a Train, 1951, his personal life remained marred by the trauma of betrayal. Tragically, he died shortly afterward at just 32, a victim of a fatal reaction to prescription sedatives. Combined with alcohol, Walker's story underscores a harsh reality of Hollywood's golden era. Personal betrayal often occurred in full view, with powerless individuals left to endure public humiliation and private heartbreak. George Sanders, renowned for his sophisticated, sardonic screen personas, built a career portraying intelligent, cynical men who were rarely fooled by anyone. With his cultured British accent and worldly demeanor, he became the quintessential Hollywood intellectual, admired for wit and poise. Yet in private life, Sanders faced a cruel irony. He was married to Zsa Gabor, one of Hollywood's most notoriously unfaithful women, whose attention was rarely directed toward him. Sanders and Gabor married in 1949, uniting two highly distinctive personalities. Sanders, cerebral and reserved, seemed an unlikely match for Gabor's flamboyant, attention-seeking character. Friends initially questioned the union, wondering what Sanders saw beyond Gabor's obvious beauty. At first, he was enthralled by her spontaneity, emotional expressiveness, and uninhibited charm, which contrasted sharply with his own measured demeanor. But fascination quickly turned to disillusionment as Gabor's penchant for male attention became impossible to ignore. Unlike most Hollywood wives, Gabor made little effort to conceal her affairs. She flirted openly in Sanders' presence, engaged in suggestive behavior, and maintained liaisons with numerous men, including high-profile figures like Frank Sinatra and Dominican diplomat Porfirio Rubirosa. Sanders endured both the infidelities and the public spectacle surrounding them, which made him the target of gossip and portrayed him as a cuckold, a humiliation that clashed sharply with the commanding, composed characters he played on screen. Despite the ongoing betrayal, Sanders did not immediately end the marriage. Instead, he oscillated between cold withdrawal and desperate attempts to win Gabor's exclusive attention. He showered her with expensive gifts, jewelry, furs, and even a Mercedes convertible, trying to compete with her numerous admirers. When these gestures failed, he retreated into icy sarcasm, making pointed public remarks about fidelity and dignity. The marriage continued, under this painful dynamic for 5 years, finally ending in 1954 when Sanders filed for divorce, citing extreme cruelty, a legal euphemism, barely hinting at the public humiliation he suffered. Gabor went on to marry 5 more times, while Sanders remarried 3 times, including a brief union with Gabor's sister, Magda, leaving many to speculate about his lingering emotional entanglement. Sanders' experience with Gabor intensified the cynicism that defined both his persona and his worldview. He became increasingly bitter about relationships, making caustic public statements that mirrored the disillusioned characters he portrayed. His 1972 death, accompanied by his famous note, "Dear world, I am leaving because I am bored," reflected a man profoundly disillusioned by both Hollywood's illusions and the personal betrayals that had shaped his life. The stories of these 10 golden age stars reveal a recurring truth. Behind the glamour, charm, and heroic screen images lay human vulnerability, heartbreak, and betrayal. Hollywood's golden age was dazzling on camera, but off-screen. Even the most celebrated men faced the harsh realities of love, infidelity, and emotional survival.